Southern Africa's Kalahari Desert. Temperatures hit more than 40 degrees Celsius, well over 100 Fahrenheit. It almost never rains in the Kalahari, less than an inch a year. But this day, it rains in the Kalahari. And just after dawn on a remote landing strip in northern South Africa, the rain is a blessing from heaven. This is Gus van Dijk, one of the world's experts on rewilding, restoring land to its natural state. He's collecting 2 rare Kalahari lions to take back to the Swallow Kalahari Reserve, where he's the new general manager.
Yeah, bring him here and we'll just put his head here.
Gus knows that the blazing desert heat is only hours away. He worries that the lions have already been tranquilized for more than 2 hours, and that lions can die if they overheat.
The head there and his legs facing in.
Or are kept unconscious for much more than 6 hours.
Pretty, eh? Look at those paws, huh?
Gus also knows that if the lions awake during the flight, he'll have to kill them.
Where's the next guy?
Give them a lethal injection to save the plane and everyone on board. Once they land at Swallow, Gus and his crew will try to catch 3 of Swallow's own lions and fly them out to another reserve, all before dark on this day. It's going to be a long, hard day.
The rain is just an absolute godsend for us for this operation. When it's cool like this, it's just so much better for the lions. What this rain means is that we're going to be able to get to Swallow in around about an hour, get them out of the plane before they overheat. Overheating is the one concern that I really have for the well-being of these animals. For lions in a closed area like this, their temperature can skyrocket and we could lose them. It can be fatal.
The plane is heading an hour to the south, to the Swallow Kalahari Reserve. Swallow is the newest and largest private wildlife reserve in southern Africa.
By swapping animals like this, we're preventing genetic bottlenecks from occurring. At the moment, in small areas, there is a potential for a lot of inbreeding to take place. If we can bring new blood into these isolated lion populations, we'll ensure that the genetic health and the vigor of the population is maintained. Even though it is nice and cool outside, I just got to keep an eye on body temperature. You can often tell whether a lion is hot or not just by feeling the pads of his feet. Nice and cool. In fact, all around here in his groin, even his breath is nice and cool. That's a good indicator for me. The animal's very stable. They're both breathing easily. These guys are doing great. Incidentally, this flight has been made possible by the Battaliers organization. This is an organization of supporters and their aircraft who provide their plane and their expertise to fly conservation projects across southern Africa because of the conservation significance of projects like this. Great guys. These are just magnificent lions. Look at them. Kalahari lions are just perfect. The very typical black mane in that bigger guy. These are just such perfect Kalahari animals. I think they're going to do great on Swallow. Here's one of these males. He's starting to wake up now. He's showing signs of coming out of the drug. I'm just going to give him an intravenous shot. I was asking the pilot earlier what he's going to do if one of these animals do happen to stand up, and he's got this wonderful theory that he's going to put the nose skyward and just keep flying uphill so that the lions and me, of course, get thrown to the back of the plane. Pilot tells me we're coming into land at Swallow very soon. The idea now is as we get onto the ground, we're going to head out. We've got trackers on the ground now looking. Hopefully they've picked up the 3 lions. We'll be able to catch those 3 lions and get them onto this plane. If we can do all of that today in this cool, it's going to be great. This whole operation over in a day, wonderful. We want to get them out of the plane as soon as possible, let them get to the boma, the holding pen, where they'll sleep off their drugs. Fortunately, they'll be able to have a nice cool lie down and process the drugs. This rain, this coolness inside the aircraft and outside has taken a lot of the anxiety out of this operation for the day. It means that the planning that we had of doing this over 2 days, we can now shrink into 1 day. We can catch the lions, move them onto the plane, get them out of here. By moving lions between reserves like this, we're making an important contribution to lion conservation in isolated reserves. By moving animals and introducing new blood into populations, particularly with the Kalahari lion, which is definitely showing declines in numbers, we're able to contribute to the conservation of this magnificent animal. So did you get my message to bring the 3 lions?
Guys, they've all been found.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, they've all been found and the guys are sitting on
We
the
might
lines.
make the most of this weather and just go for it.
That's going to be a big lion, eh? Look at the size of his head.
By now, the new lions have been tranquilized for nearly 4 hours. They're getting close to their 6-hour safety limit. And they still have to be fitted with radio collars so they can be tracked, inoculated against rabies, given antibiotics, and have blood drawn for testing. After that, 3 of Swallow's own male lions still have to be caught and flown out before dusk. All this within the next 8.5 hours.
You guys going to make a suggestion that we actually pull them apart?
Yeah, I was just actually going to...
Because they're going to chew each other otherwise, eh?
Do you want to give me a hand? Took a bit of a knock on his, he's been chewed on his back legs and he's been beaten up already by Dad. Beautiful line, huh?
The cell phone cover we put on your night, I didn't want to drop that.
Where's my bicycle?
The actual...
Okay. Let me give us rivet. That rivet, come on there. Okay, you ready? Watch his ear, watch his ear. Okay.
Okay, do you want to just...
Might
have a few improvements, but it's all after hours.
A little bit more. With all this hair, you want to be sure you get it tight enough so that it doesn't pull off. It must also be loose enough so that it doesn't affect his roaring and his ability to swallow a wildebeest. Obviously, this big boy's going to dominate.
I think so.
Any food, but just trying to get the perfect fit. He's not going to grow much, this male. So we just fit the collar fairly tight. Make sure that he's not compromised in any way. He's got to still swallow wildebeest and be able to roar. You can imagine with a tight collar, trying to bellow like a lion. It's not going to work. So that's about right. Can you just put the vice grip on there? That's okay with it. I think it'll. Okay. Is it all right? Let's see. I think it's got it. Okay. Make sure it's not getting choked. Okay, ready? Go for it. So, that was a good one. Just check here. Oh, it's fine.
I just got the age here.
The guys are giving these things names already.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Who's this? What is it?
Where's hierdie? Waar is Augustine?
Augustine.
Wat is hierdie in sy naam?
Rapula and Mr. Rain.
Rain.
Okay.
Next, Gus and his team have to tranquilize and capture 3 of Swalu's lions and fly them out before dusk. There are only 5 hours left for the Great Lion Swap and a lot of territory to cover.
Swalu is an enormous system, but it's a system that has already had a whole lot of negative influences by man. It has been used as a cattle farm and sheep farm for decades. Swalu needs time to recover.
Okay. Keep going. Okay. Stop there. Stop.
The wildlife needs to move. The lion needs to hunt. The cheetahs and the hyenas need to be crisscrossing the area and putting the wildlife under pressure, allowing this ecosystem and all its components to kickstart and start churning again. The owners of the property say they're trying to return the Kalahari to itself. I guess that means just ensuring that everything that is the Kalahari is in place for the system to function on its own again.
Lions are not out to kill you, but they are incredibly quick. And if they do suddenly find a person right on top of them, they'd have 2 choices, either to lunge forward and defend themselves or to run away. You want to try and get rid of that variable in their decision making. Give a lion room and he's fine. He's not a dangerous beast at all. It's when you take away the options from a lion that he is dangerous.
1, 2, 3, take.
It's our job to make sure that all the pieces that make up the Kalahari puzzle are in place. We will see that the system starts to breathe again, and the natural processes that make this the Kalahari are allowed to happen.
So I'll leave you with him.
Yeah.
Do you want to make your way to the airstrip?
Okay. I just want to grab my camera.
Steve and Joe. For Gus. Okay, do you want to give us some cover here? Where's the line? Marcus, did you want to wait for those vehicles to give you a shield? It's a magnificent line there, isn't it?
Yes.
Putting pressure on the other one. One's over. One's in the boma. Got off
This is some kind of old callus or something. Oh, it is a broken rib. It's very calcified. Yeah. But this is a boy who's born and bred in the deep southern Canada. Do you want to do it now or you want to do it later?
If we do them together, then we know what we can write down, and then also we're going to probably take the maximum. Because remember, they're going to an area where there's probably worms, just give them the picture.
Okay.
How's Andrew doing with his one?
It's stuck up a tree.
Stuck up a tree.
Yeah.
So fall asleep there.
Yeah.
And run up a tree.
Just up, climb the tree.
Are we going to the plane now?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether... Let me send... I wonder if I can go and give a hand. How far is that boma from here? They go this side? It's really interesting that you've got a male lion that seems to prefer climbing trees. In fact, whenever he gets uncomfortable, he heads up a tree. That's particularly unusual. Normally you'd expect a lion to lie down in the grass. That's where he's best suited. And his camouflage is better suited in the grass. Okay, do you need hands to get him down? Yeah, but as he sleeps, we might have to just get manpower to get him down.
Just let him go down first.
Yeah, that was. Yeah,
I heard that. At the tree.
Kind of sticks out in that tree. At the moment he's sporting quite a large belly, which is about 3/4 of a blessback in there. So he's lugging a lot of weight around, and yet he still chooses to climb a tree. This is the first time I've seen a male like this that climbs trees.
Did you get the other two there, Gus?
Yeah, no, they're fine. They're on their way to the airport. You know what you want to do is you want to get someone under here to support his butt. That's what you want to do.
You can maybe come and help us. Just push him up from underneath. And we're going to start him up this picture. Okay, tell me. Lower him down. So you're underneath him?
I'm underneath him.
Sorry. Okay, let's push him up. Push him to the backside. Let's start him back.
Okay.
Watch it, he doesn't fall on.
Okay, yeah, I've got some bum here. Go slowly.
Okay, so lekker red. Hou vast.
That's all. Sy kop moenie vashak nie.
Okay, speed up from underneath there, Gus.
That's all.
Okay, my hand.
That's out. Alright. That's down slowly.
One line out of the three.
Alright.
I thought he might jump out.
As you dart him in the tree.
Chase him, but he didn't want to get out.
It's a shame.
The most difficult part is done. All 3 tranquilized lions are rushed to the Swalu airstrip. Problem is, if the lions can't fly this evening, the tranquilizer will wear off and they'll wake. They can't be dieted again today, too much wear and tear even for lions, so the whole dangerous process will have to be started again next week. At the Swalu airstrip, the lions have to be checked before loading onto the plane.
Gus, you ready?
The minutes tick by. It's getting very close to the dusk deadline.
Okay, ons soek sy kop daai kant, hè.
If Gus and his crew can get all 3 lions into the air within the next 10 minutes, they'll make it. All in one day.
Stel sy kop daarso. Hey, first. Soek sy kop net so voor. Ja, sy moet opstaan.
Glo jy dit daar teen die lyn, Gus?
We'll fly them across to the other side of South Africa, where they'll be offloaded and released onto a new game reserve there. And then the swap will be over, all in a day.
The Kalahari has always been home to the magnificent black-maned lions and the thunderous roars marking their territories. The original people of the Kalahari, the San, called their bond, their kinship with lions and the other animals they lived with and hunted, dancing with God. And unknown thousands of years ago, here on Swalu, the San showed respect for the animals with rock carvings like this splendid lion. Today, the great lion of the San people is threatened with extinction. But there is still hope because of reserves like Swalu.
30 years ago, there wasn't a single lion in this area, and they had been exterminated for miles around. And here we are sitting, watching lions functioning, reproducing, hunting, killing, and having exactly the impact on the ecosystem that they should be having and that they've had in the development of African savannas over eons. Here, those processes are being re-established, and that all through the reintroduction of animals like the lion. As these predators are introduced into a new system, it's as if they're just breathing life into the system, which is a bit of a contradiction for predators that are killing things. But they're making sure that the system starts ticking over. Animals are living and dying and surviving in the real sense of the word. And that just contributes to the health of this ecosystem. Without predators, the system is really not going to be natural in its true sense.
Without reserves like Swallow, the only black rhinos left in the world would be behind bars in zoos. 50 years ago, at least 100,000 of them roamed southern Africa. Today, there are only some 2,000 left on the planet. Twenty of the rarest of them, the fabled desert black rhino, now shelter here in Swallow.
Black rhinos as a species in Africa has declined dramatically. In South Africa, more so this arid subspecies. There's only a few dozen of these animals in South Africa, and Swallow has a small portion of these so-called desert black rhino. Every individual is important to that population.
Take a nice deep breath, not too concerned.
It's absolutely critical for the long-term management of these isolated populations that we allow interchange between those populations, and as that population grows, then we'll be able to spread them across a greater area. All the parameters that you use for managing this population rest on us being able to tell it apart from the others. So rhinos to humans tend to look very much the same. I'm sure they can tell each other apart. We need to get these notches in the ear. She'll also get a microchip.
The heart rate in that, Kathy?
Yeah, it's 80.
80, which is perfect, between 70 and 80.
So we can move animals between populations and get maximum gene flow. We can have a look at how productive individuals are. Every individual is important to that population, those that are on Swallow and those that are on our national parks properties as well.
She's nice and stable, Gus. Just takes into consideration how she's breathing. Is anyone collected ticks?
Dave the vet has asked for us to collect some of the ticks that are on this animal. She hasn't got many, but around the tail she's got a few. These guys are just wondering what's happened to their nice rhino. This guy's already burrowing into me, look at that. These things have got a grip on them.
The reason we're taking the ticks is we're just doing a bit of research into the black rhino and the black and white rhino species, and that just to see what sort of ticks occur on them, and in the different areas, what sort of ticks are more prevalent in the different areas. And then with that, we're hoping in the future to correlate that to tick-borne diseases.
Saturation with nothing.
Yes.
Do you have an ID, like a name or anything?
Nothing as yet, no.
Okay,
Andrew, who's her mother?
Kagani.
Okay, you can call it Kagani calf.
Kagani calf.
No, they left the cotton wool in his ears.
How long will that take to come?
Quick.
This is Swallow at the start of the 21st century, an island of conservation. Time and change have been frozen, and the land has become a fenced time capsule. And this is pretty much how Swallow is going to stay as long as it's a managed reserve. For Gus van Dijk, it's like running a giant ranch, a ranch in which he and his team reintroduce indigenous animals, get rid of alien animals and plants, protect rare and endangered animals, keep a rough balance between predator and prey, fight disease, and keep the reserve as close to natural as possible. Some ecologists question all this intervention, say humans should let nature make the decisions, in effect, free the wildlife reserves. For Gus van Dijk, there's no real debate. His job is to return the Kalahari to itself, and he has a reserve to run. Part of his job is to educate tourists who come to Swalu to experience the beauty and power of the Kalahari as it is now.
The big picture is Swalu is trying to return, as I'm sure you've heard, and we've largely achieved it, I believe. But a lot of the species that were wiped out from this area in its farming days, cheetahs and lions were probably easy, but even things like leopard. In those mountains, they met all wiped out. And slowly, where we get the opportunity, we're trying to return a lot of these species. Predators really represent the pinnacle of achieving your ecological objectives on a place like this. Once historically we've accepted that cheetahs were wiped out and we've lived with it. But in a property like Swalu, where the primary aim is to establish the processes, it's not specifically to protect that impala, it's to protect the ecosystem that impala lives in. That's really where we're going.
Not long ago, the cheetah, fastest hunter on Earth, roamed throughout Africa and Asia. Now, few survive in the wild. This animal slipped into Swalu from a neighboring farm where it was hunted as vermin. Gus sees the dry savanna of Swalu as perfect habitat for the revival, the return of the shy, endangered cheetah. If the cat can flourish and breed in Swalu, offspring will be exported to other reserves and cheetah numbers slowly restored. Now this one has to be darted and tranquilized, tested for disease, fitted with a radio collar, and taught to keep inside Swalu's electric fences.
We really can offer fantastic cheetah habitat on Swalu. It's really habitat that's, I guess, made for cheetah. Cheetah do really well in these dry, arid environments. 1,000 square kilometers of protected cheetah habitat. That's worth gold to the cheetah as a species. Tried to keep the dose of the drugs very low on this animal. As we approached him, he got up. He was just a little bit too sporty still, so we needed to just top him up with a small dose. Fortunately, we had some strapping lads here to hold him down. You really want to make this as unstressful keep the stress down to a minimum. I've given it an intravenous dose of the drug. It should be quite calm now. His breathing's calming down. He's nice and cool. I think he's fine. The important thing is to keep the eyes closed. As soon as his eyes are closed, I think it disorientates them so much that they don't have a direction to go. The ecosystem thrives a lot better by bringing these cheetah in. Swalu is just the most perfect habitat for cheetah.
We're going to carry it with it back as straight as possible. Okay.
We've identified the need for increasing the cheetah population. There's a couple of really wild, persecuted animals around, but certainly not any kind of number that would have an impact on the system that we want. So we've brought some cheetah in from surrounding areas. And the problem with these animals is that they come from persecuted backgrounds, and so they're quite shy. You must remember what's happened to these cheetah. They've been historically shot at, trapped, poisoned, chased with dogs. Absolute dedication in getting rid of them. While we want the ecological benefits of cheetah, predation is a very important part of restoring the natural ecosystem here. We, of course, want the tourism benefits as well.
The theory is that the captured cheetah will have learned to respect electric fences during its 3 weeks in the boma and stay safely inside Tswalu, where it's expected to meet up with other cheetahs and breed. The plan now is to open the boma gate, drive out dragging bait, and let the cheetah follow the bait into the 100,000 hectares of the reserve.
We keep them in a boma like this, or a holding camp, just to make sure that they settle down, learn to trust man again, and learn to respect the electric fences. It's important that they learn to trust man, because as much as these cheetah are a part of the Kalahari ecosystem, they also need to be enjoyed by tourists. And so cheetah are a very important part of the tourist product that we see here. The benefits of bringing these cheetah in are to the Kalahari ecosystem primarily. The ecosystem thrives a lot better by having these levels of predation. Here's 1,000 square kilometers of habitat which they've been persecuted on historically, and now it's really well protected and an area where they could thrive. And then lastly, the Tswalu tourist product benefits then from the cheetahs as well.
I think we might have to move. Let's just us back out. No, I think it's us.
There's an old saying out of Africa that the best way to make the gods laugh is to tell them your plans. Seems this cheetah prefers the safety and comfort of the boma to freedom, for the moment anyway. Meanwhile, it's time to release Rapula and Pula from their boma. Time for them to meet the lionesses prowling the neighborhood ever since these two males flew in.
Our primary interest here is whether these two males stay together. I'd rather not see them split up and separate and try and set up their own territories. It's pretty important to the project that they do stay together and probably realize that their strength is in each other. We'll just keep our eye on how strong this bond is and if it in fact lasts. I would have preferred them to at least stop for a minute or two, or even a second or two as they came out the gate, just to show me that they feared the electricity. At this stage, unfortunately, it doesn't look like they did. As huge as Tswalu is, we're going to rely on the electric fence that surrounds it to prevent these lions heading out into the farming communities around us and wreaking havoc. Anyway, they've had their time in the boma, nearly 3 weeks. Hopefully in that time they've had enough exposure to the electric fence. We haven't seen how good buddies they are when there's females around. To me, it's miraculous to think that just 3 weeks ago, these males didn't know each other, and they were sitting deep in the Kalahari, perhaps 300 kilometers from where we are now. And here we are in Tswalu, two males. They're great buddies. Here they've got this opportunity to recolonize this large area of Tswalu. What we want is for them to go out, hunt together, take over the territory together. We know that there's females around. The females would have been roaring, and I'm pretty sure they're aware they haven't heard any males. So this must just be prime territory for these guys. A whole lot of females walking around looking for males. The next mark, I suppose, or benchmark when we'll have a look whether this coalition is in fact going to survive, whether the two males will stay together, is when they come across their first females and some mating opportunities present themselves. The large male will certainly dominate, and then
The behavior of the little male will dictate whether the coalition stays together. He'll have to hang around on the periphery 4 or 5 days perhaps until the big males finish mating. This is where friendship is tested to the extreme. There is a belief that lion males rely entirely on females for their food, but of course that's not true. These males will have to go out there and feed themselves. They will of course muscle in on anything the females can kill, but if the females kill something small and they're not around, they're going to miss out, and they are going to have to feed themselves. And so this could very well be the last free lunch they get.
Lions and humans lived together fairly peacefully in both Africa and Europe for at least 10,000 years. Over the centuries, we exterminated the European lions. Now we're close to destroying the last wild African lions. Why? Conflict with humans, the most serious threat to lion survival. Reserves like Tswalu are their only real hope.
This is the younger of the 2 males that was brought in to Tswalu just over a year ago. You can see he's actually starting to fill out nicely. He's getting that black mane. That is so typical of a Kalahari lion. You can see his chest has filled out a lot more. He's got a lot deeper in the chest, and of course his head's getting a lot bigger. We don't know enough to say that he hasn't fathered any cubs, but certainly from our observations, the bigger male, the big black maned guy, has had, let's say, the lion's share of mating opportunities. It's very likely that this guy has fathered at least some of the new cubs. We have about a dozen new cubs born from this coalition since we've introduced them a year ago. That is really an incredibly unusual prey item for a lion. And it just typifies just how opportunistic they are. He sees something that's just not as alert as it should be, and he's onto it. That is hardly a meal for him, but it's protein anyway, and he's going to take it. And so he's chased down that coot. It really just is not typical lion food, but fantastic. That is just so typical of a lion. And in fact, any of the big cats of Africa, that they'll try and take a meal even at the least expected moments. It's the first time I've seen lions kill a bird apart from an ostrich.
Two days later, Gus comes across Pula again, this time at a much bigger kill. But Pula isn't alone anymore. He and the mighty Rapula have stayed in coalition, running their extended family.
Oh, that is spectacular. Look at that beautiful black mane, typical of a Kalahari lion. Huh? Okay, this is nice. Look at him coming in. Hell, he's a beautiful lion. Huh? And just imagine how impressed that big boy is. He says, geez, little oak, you managed to pull this down by yourself. Huh? The Kalahari lion's not a separate species of lion, but certainly a very pretty lion. And you see, right across the Kalahari, they are famed for their beautiful black manes and their big body size. From our observations, the bigger male, the big black maned guy, has had, let's say, the lion's share of mating opportunities. We have about a dozen new cubs born from this coalition since we've introduced them a year ago. And the little cubs are running around, getting close to their first birthday. Okay, the mother and the cubs at the back, hanging back, letting the big male come and have a look around, see that it's all safe. She'll probably let the cubs come in now that the big male's eating. There you go, look at that little guy coming in. Fortune favors the brave. That's this pride's oldest cub with these new males. Males will keep the females away, but it'll be far more tolerant to those little guys. That little lion cub's head in amongst two huge males, it just goes a long way to just proving how brave lions are. I guess that's where they get their hearts from. See that right under his jaws? Look at that. You're going to have guts to be there. The big male's tolerant to those cubs because he almost certainly has an awareness that they're his. It's in his genetic interests to make sure that these cubs remain well fed and well protected. And so at a big kill like this, he's going to give them access, let them eat all the meat they want because they are his relatives, they're his blood. The females, on the other hand, have no genetic interest to him or no genetic relation, so he'd probably be less tolerant to them eating on the carcass. It's as if there's an understanding that that's his bloodline, whereas the female is not his bloodline at all. So his interests are actually more in making sure that that little cub gets food.
Tswalu is first and foremost an area set aside for conservation. The word Tswalu actually means a rebirth. Our intention here is to allow nature to continue to repair and heal the scars of historical mismanagement. Over time, we believe the place will recover, the grass will return, the history of mismanagement will slowly fade away. We can help it along a bit. We can remove the fences, allow the free movement of game, removing the alien species, alien plants, alien animals. Tswalu is a work in progress, and I don't know that it will ever be complete. That's really what attracts me to a place like this, I suppose. But it will always be changing, it will always be growing, and really it's the process of change and the process of recovery that makes this such a special place. But perhaps most importantly, we will apply the idea that we have to allow this system to run itself, to develop naturally and to respond to the changing climates. The Kalahari is an incredibly fluctuating system. It has periods of drought and it has periods of plenty. It changes over a matter of weeks depending on rainfall. It has gone from denuded grazing into an incredible wildlife savanna. And I think in this form, it's going to be here forever.
In this form, that's the key. Because its fences prevent animal migration, Tswalu can never be truly wild. Only as close to wild as a dedicated ecologist like Gus van Dijk can make it. We humans, in our need, greed, and ignorance, have slaughtered most of the planet's wildlife and forced the survivors into these fenced and managed reserves. Enormous wildlife ranches, islands of conservation, frozen in time and place. Even so, because there are wildlife reserves like Tswalu, there are still places where we and our children can see and feel and try to understand at least some of the glory of the natural world we're so close to destroying. Ecologists like Gus van Dijk are the guardians who protect these islands of conservation. They may not be the original, untamed, unfenced wilderness, but they're just about all we've got left of our natural world. And as a gift to the world, reserves like Tswalu are surely magnificent too. I'm Tim Knight.